I think we can start, right? Cool. Then welcome to the AI-empowered team. And let's dive directly in because you might already have the first question, which is, Dominik, AI-empowered teams? Do we even need teams anymore? Do we even need engineers and product managers and designers and the likes of it? Can I not just found a company, get the 25K for a GmbH and then, code everything with AI? And there is even, a pattern around it. You might already have heard a talk, or will still hear a talk, that references dark software factories. It's like this ominous magic, machine where you put specifications in on the one side, and then you get running functional systems out at the other side. Like there's no human in the middle, in the factory floor. That's why it doesn't need lights on, because nobody's looking at it. And some people call it the future of software engineering, that you have a fully autonomous software development lifecycle, right? You want to automate as much as possible and hand over as much as possible to the AI agents. There's a lot of hype on it, especially like if you look at LinkedIn and look for dark software factory, you will find lots and lots of long posts and small posts and AI-generated slop about the topic. But also, to be honest, I really haven't seen any organization that has yet to build a successful dark software factory. So really no one made it yet. If we're taking a step back and are honest about where we are in this whole AI journey, then you could say, like, yesterday, like a couple of months ago, and for a lot of organizations still today, AI is like a chat window, right? It's like you have one input, you get like one answer back, and it's like working like a co-pilot, and the user triggers every action. That was a couple of months back for most of us, and today we are working with Cloud Code, we are working with OpenClaw, we are working with Codex and Thermos and whatever other like harness you have, and like suddenly harness engineering is a thing that we think about, and it's all about agents and agent loops. So agents are a more powerful version of AI, so to say, that can execute multi-step processes. So the task horizon of what they can do is becoming more and more complex. With the new systems that we build around it. And you might already see that, some of the processes are more successful than others, and some of the processes need less and less oversight, and they are moving into the background. They are moving into like a form where you're just interested in the outcomes and not interested in every individual step. And I think that's the future where we are heading. That we move agents into the background on remote systems and let them even create more and more complex tasks, or fulfill more and more complex tasks. And humans care about the outcomes and not the individual steps. That's the general trend, right? We still have human in the loop, but where we are in that loop is getting pulled out more and more, right? We started where we didn't trust AI at all, and then looked at every individual thing that AI was doing, and to be honest, it was also really bad. And now it becomes better and better with the models, and so the outcomes become better and better, and we tend to give it more trust. And do other feedback forms on them. And the question now is, like, how can we pull out this human oversight and this human in the loop more and more, so it gets into the direction of dark software factory, where it can produce good systems fully autonomously, and we don't have to care about all of the nitty-gritty hands-on coding. Sorry if you love that. Maybe you don't want that, because this is the other side of the coin, right? A lot of people always, when I talk about AI, are like, yeah, Dominik, it's nice what you talk about dark software factories and all that, but so much of what AI agents produce is absolute slop. It's absolute garbage. Just talking about the LinkedIn posts of so many people talking about dark software factories, right? I wouldn't read it. I wouldn't trust it. And that's also valid. So the question is, how can we make AI work in a more reliable way so that we can pull out of that human in the loop and trust it even more, right? And that's where I come in. So, hi, I'm Dominik, for everybody who doesn't know me. I'm Group Product Manager at Giant Swarm, and there we are building platforms. And platforms for developers, and now we also started to build platforms for AI agents. And we have an observability team for our developer platform and for the agents. And we try to use AI for everything within that observability team because, we had some time. What do you do in these days? And one of the cases that I want to share with you is our alert review process, right? Observability, we have a lot of incidents going on with the complex wide systems that we have. And once a week, we did like a review process where we looked at last week's thrown alerts, asked ourselves what happened, why did it happen, what can we learn out of it, how can we improve our systems. And so far, it was like we used Opsgenie, and there was like a search query in the UI, and that was saved locally in a node. So an engineer had to pull out the search query, adapt like the time frame of the search, and it was a 1 hour discussion around it. It was not ideal, to be honest. So we said, why not let AI do the whole process for us to go through the alerts, see if then a pattern emerges, whatever, and give us some hints on it. And the setup was quite easy. We just looked at the agent review, made a skill out of it, basically let Claude Code create a skill out of it. We use Claude for nearly everything in our setup. And then we created an incident tool MCP for Opsgenie, end of life, so it didn't really provide an MCP. We wrote one that was specific for that access to our setup of Opsgenie. And then our idea was a local Cloud Code setup can just use our agent review scale with an MCP to get the information and then create the alert review report. So quite easy. Several months later, so we really tried it every week, and it was constantly wrong, but really confident about it, right? In a way that only old man can do. And the review took way longer because we didn't really trust it, right? So we had to review everything it was putting in the report. That took longer than the process before that, where we just discussed it based on like our weird query. And the engineers also had some struggle with setting up the initial MCP server, getting the skill updated every time and all that. And at the end, the engineers used AI, but to write a CLI tool to get around, writing the query all the time. And, that was a bit of a fail. So the fully automated dark factory of alert reviews did really come to place. Another story that we looked at was the OpenTelemetry support. Our observability team is basically delivering an LGTM stack for our customers, so Loki, Mimir, Grafana, Tempo, all that stuff. And we wanted to support OTel for so long across the whole stack, because LGTM can do that, but you need to change some configuration and then, change your data pipelines and stuff like that. And funny enough, no customer requested it from us yet. So we were like, yeah, it's a nice tool for marketing and so on, but like no one really pays us any money at this point to do it. And it was quite some effort touching so many different systems and aligning it and testing it and all that for just marketing. So we said, let's do a software factory hackathon and just see what happens if we, use that fancy new pattern that emerges there and how we can build that up. And what we did was, especially the top one there, really important, we did like a 3-hour meeting where the whole team got together and we discussed the architecture, the risks, like the edge cases, the scenarios, test cases. We discussed everything that was important for like an architecture design of like the whole feature, like we would create a specification out of it, right? Really a good technical concept and idea of what we wanted to build. Then we fed our engineering guidelines that we already had, like, in our intranet and all that, to the agent. Until then, we already built up agent MDs in every repository for every tool, where like there was information about what the agents can find in that repository, what that slice of the system is, and a holistic view of the whole system. We created evaluation metrics and like test cases for our OTIL support, and added some web search tools, and did many more things as preparation. Put all of that into our local Claude code, and then let it run overnight, deriving specifications out of the information, implementing it, testing it against the specifications, against the evals and the test cases, and then deriving new specs and doing that loop until the morning. And in the morning, we had a lot of PRs open on the systems with like the code changes, but also we had it directly deployed in our test environment where we could just test it functionally. And what can I say? I mean, it was amazing. It was such a good feeling because, we did a full week of a hackathon, and basically we were done after day one, and we were like, oh, this worked. Wow, surprising. So a big question then became like, now why did one fail and the other succeed? And our base learning and looking at that was that it was not the model or the harness. I mean, it was both Claude Code as a harness, and it was like Opus 4.5 for the alert review and 4.7 for like the OTIL thing. So maybe slight difference in the model, but like not significantly. It really wasn't about the tech. The challenge, in my opinion, was completely organizational. And so that's what we derived out of it, and that's the 4 easy recipe for how you get AI success. It's like context is infrastructure, knowledge architecture is key, agent fleets, not single tools, solve the review bottleneck. So thanks for listening to my TED talk, and if you have any questions. All right, now let's go into it. Context is infrastructure. What do I mean with that? In the alert review process, we didn't really have a lot of context or information for the agent to work with, right? We had one MCP server and like a Claude generated skill that didn't really have that much information in it, to be honest. It was just, this is an alert, please review it. Something like that. Claude generated it, so it wasn't really good. While in the OTIL support, you could, you did see, it was a long list of guidelines of agent MDs, information about the repositories, information about what we want to build and how we want to build it, plus the 3-hour specification meeting where we did the whole concept. So the OTIL support had a lot of context to work with, while the alert review had like none. And that's a really important case, because basically we tend to forget it, but LLMs are like a next word prediction machine, right? So you need to really give it a lot of references so that it knows what the next potential word is, and the reference room becomes smaller, or it will take wild guesses. So treat your agents like a junior dev is like the typical saying, right? And don't assume that it knows what you mean, but really be explicit and explain everything in a nice way. Like I had this fun story with like a colleague of mine who talked to his boss, and the boss was like, "Oh, this is what we explained. Like this is the system we built up with context for our agent, and like with our engineering guidelines and what's important for us." And the junior was like, or my colleague friend was like, "Oh, so if you would have explained it that way to me as a junior, I would have been such a better engineer." And that's what you need to do. Treat your agents even better than your juniors. How can you add context, right, with MCP, skills, integrations, APIs? Build it up, right? Write information into your intranet and connect stuff to your agent. You have a lot of tools that your agent can feed up on. And I have to say, Giant Swarm cheated a bit here. I think that's always a bit of a caveat, because we've been 12 plus years remote only. We work across different time zones. Antonia here is from South Korea. That's wild. We have no core working hours because of that, and like a 4-day work week where like the day is flexible, which really sucks for coordination. So it means we had to build up the context over years, and it really helped us because plugging all of that context into the machine certainly, was not just good for our engineers and people working at Giant Swarm, but also for the machine itself. So really document everything. Next one, knowledge architecture is key. Because in the alert review process, one skill, which is let Cloud Code created. There was no deliberate design on the information in how we, actually made it that the agent can really, we didn't really know what was in the scale, right? And the OTL support on the other side was with the agent MDs designed in a way that any agent can get the information of a repository that it needs. The engineering guidelines were written in a way that we knew agents will read it. And even in the meeting, the transcript was done in a way where we said, okay, AI, very important decision here. And then we repeated the decision in a way that, it was clear in the transcript for AI to understand what is important in here, because that's what AI sucks at. They really can't, those models can't know what's important and what's not. For them, everything is somehow the same, right? So you need to design the context in a clear format for a specific task so that the AI agents, can differentiate between what's important and what's not important. That's your job to do, right? Information architecture is basically your job. Because just pushing whatever, in the image before, the buffet of different information into the system will lead to a lot of token bloat, and that's very expensive. That will become very expensive. So it's not just about volume, it's about intent. What are you intending to do? And every information that you push into the system should be intentful. For example, don't work with duplications, but build up connections between information. Easy stuff like that. And it's not just about static documentations like guidelines, agent MDs, but also old sessions, because that's where decisions are taking place. So I've seen the trend across the industry that there's more and more talks about the challenge of building up agent memory and how we can make agent memory really a thing. I think that's one of the main reasons why Hermes agent became so big, because it has a really interesting aspect of agent memory behind it. And you can check out Obsidian for a local organization of context, which I, for example, also use very often. And since you have to design information in a way, and the context in a way, you can actually test for it, and I think that's also very important. So create evaluation metrics and test scenarios, like a repeatable test scenario, for example, create an app with these specifications and then do the same specifications over and over with the agents. Or what we did for a benchmark was we did give our SRE agent the CKA certificate and said do the CKA certificate and then see how it scored. And then scored a scenario outcome of the test cases you did with the evaluation metrics, analyze the traces, see what happened, and so on. What is evaluation metrics? Well, there's 3 big sets or 3 big ways on how you can evaluate your scenarios. It's golden data set. That's the CKA. You have a set of input and known output based on the input, or code-based assertions. So, for example, unit tests or whatever. And the most famous one, I guess, is the LLM as a judge. Where another agent, rates the outcome of an agent. For example, I have one that is don't use a lot of adjectives. How many adjectives are in this sentence? Because they tend to throw them in something. All right, next one: agent fleets, not single tools. Because now you have your context, and it's really deliberately designed for one task, but in the alert review, we had this one thing where we had one agent for everything. Really got still bloated even with all of the context design that we did, because we reused that session over and over again, and it takes the session context and sends it to the LLM every time. There's sure some cached tokens, but still it got really big at some point. And had to do so many different tasks, and then the performance dropped at some specific point. And on the other side, the OTL support, we had an agent that was specialized on security check, an agent that was specialized on PR checks, one that was specialized on Loki, on Tempo and Mimi, and so on. So all these agents had individual specialties and tasks, and what are you more afraid of? I think I would be really afraid of the other ones. So our experience, and this is, sadly I don't have a benchmark for it, but our feeling, our vibes are that after 80k of tokens in a session, the performance and outcome of that session significantly drops in quality. That's at least what we take as an internal threshold, where we try to keep every session that we have, every agent run that we have under this 80k, because no metric behind that. We really should check out some metrics about that. So my recommendation is use highly specialized agents with very specific tasks. Again, to avoid context bloat, and to make your life easier, designing the context for that very specific task. One thing that is becoming more and more common in the models is that they are working with sub-agents. Fable was really, really good in spawning up sub-agents and let Opus do most of the stuff, right? To a point where it was like a very short-lived meme, but it was a meme with oh, you want to do something with chemistry? Here's Opus, talk to that. Right, and you can see that the models are moving into a direction where they are delegating more and more to sub-agents, and then have one orchestrating agent that you can talk to, and the work happens in sub-agents. So design your system deliberately in a way that this is supported. What we do at Giant Swarm is, for example, work with composable agents. So yeah, you can have different model and harness combinations in an agent, but we also add system prompts that we call personalities, which is like a predefined, oh, you're an SRE agent, you're that, right? We work with different plugins, so not every agent has every skill that the company has, but very deliberate curation of skills that an agent needs for specific tasks. And same for MCP tools. It's like the meta tool, so to say, where you don't give every MCP tool to every agent, but you curate what that agent really needs for the task that the agent is supposed to solve. And then the last one, because now we have a fleet of agents that creates a shitload of pull requests, so you need to solve the review bottleneck. That's fun because it's shit on both sides. The alert review process wasn't a lot of output, but that output was still really hard to review because we didn't trust it at all. On the other side, we trusted a lot of the OTIL support stuff, or had more trust in that, but it was a really complex task across multiple repositories. So there was a lot of information that we needed to check, and a lot of dependencies that we needed to test and stuff like that. So for both the reviews were quite hard. And this is a fun statistic, which is Giant Swarm's PRs over the last year. And we didn't have a significant increase or decrease in headcount in that time frame, but our throughput is just off the roof. And if I'm honest, it's 2 to 3 teams that push that hard up. So this could be even worse, if more and more teams become more AI native in our case. And looking at those numbers of nearly 4K PRs a month, nobody's gonna review all that, because nobody really can review all of that throughput, right? So what can we do? And we call it agent feedback loops. So you need to deliberately think about how can you make the agent give itself or get feedback as early as possible, right, with checks against specification while it's implementing, putting an AI agent as a sidecar to it that does a judge thing, local checks, let it build locally with unit tests, type tests, whatever. Then your CI, then the staging, all of that, right? The important bit is you need to shift left on getting feedback as much as possible. You need as many feedback loops that AI can directly get feedback on, not wait until the CI check is done, because that's way too late for the AI to improve the outcome. So, really do test-driven development, behavior-driven development, local builds, staged rollouts, integration tests. And I'm always saying, all of that is stuff that we should have done for years now, right? Nothing of that is new. The thing is just we see the cracks where it's breaking even faster now. And shift even more left, and I might be biased as a product manager in that, but do you really need 4,000 PRs a month? Always ask yourself, do I really need every individual feature on the planet in my product? And so since code is becoming so cheap, it's even more important to understand what really gives value to your customers and what doesn't give value to your customer. Because it's not just expensive because you waste tokens on features nobody uses, you also lose customer attention. And we all know customer attention is the really important thing here. If they have such a big catalog of stuff they never use, it will definitely make your product worse. All right, and that's the 4 steps now. Context is infrastructure, knowledge architecture is key, agent fleets, not single tools, solve the review bottleneck. All right, I'll let you take a picture, and then, good. So, but, and a big but. Oh, well, okay, I cannot lie. Always remember, things in this space move so fast that everything that I said on the stage here can be AI slop in just a month. So this is, I think, a necessary disclaimer for every AI talk on conferences, but in this case as well, right? We've seen that token windows of agents is increasing, so maybe single agents might be more performant at some point later on. Maybe Rex is more important than like context in MD files, whatever. We will see what happens. The important bit is try it out because it's sticking around. It's not going to leave. We are not going back in time. So try it out, work with it, learn, and then adapt based on what you learned, right? That's the really important bit. And it's also what brought us from the alert review where it failed, and then we didn't stop, but we learned from it and then improved. So dark software factories, are we there? Is Giant Swarm a dark software factory? No, a clear no on that. It worked for a couple of features. The hotel was one example. We did it 2 times more afterwards, and it worked well for that as well. So based on an already existing system, adding individual features to that existing system, it works quite well. But the work to make it work was just as much work. I love that sentence. Which means, we had to build up a lot of context. We had to build up a lot of information for the agent. And the alert review process is still a CLI. So also AI is not good for every use case. And that's also an important learning. Like if there is a small deterministic app that you can create, don't freaking make it a token eating monster, right? But it was a lot of fun. Especially the work around the work. Because for us, it was like building capabilities for AI agents. And that is inherently platform engineering. And we are a platform engineering team, right? So it was exactly what we always loved to do, empowering people. In this case, empowering people's agents. But still, delivering capabilities. And like in platform engineering, most of the challenges are not technical, but organizational. So, your turn at the end of it. Go home, enjoy the week and the weather, but then find a specific repeating task you don't want to do anymore. Collect and design specific context for that one task. Create some tests and evaluations for that task, and then connect everything to a set of agents, right? Design the agents in a way they can help you with that task. Try it out, learn, and then adapt and repeat. That's the first step. If you do that often and more and more and more, then at some point you will definitely get into the realm of dark software factories where it can definitely help you. Thank you, and that's it.